History of life on Earth. Life on Earth must have started approximately 4 billion years ago, and the oldest fossil remains are those of organisms that lived 1 billion years ago. Clearly then, many years of the history of life on Earth are shrouded in the dark past, and we only know the most recent part of the history. This part, whose remains have been preserved and accidentally found in the geological strata, testifies of organisms that were already very complicated and divisible into phyla. So as an essential part of the history of living beings, the one that concerns their origins and first evolutionary stages can only be based on assumptions which are corroborated through experiments. Some scientists have assumed that when the Earth crust cooled over 4 billion years ago, some inorganic substances must have synthesized into complex organic molecules. Then, the passage from these complex molecules to the first veritable living beings was slow and difficult. The development and spreading of vegetal species caused oxygen to build up in the atmosphere. This gas changed the breathing of the primitive organisms. Life would find and go evolutionary way, then let it spread all over the earth, preserve itself until now, and diversify into an indefinite number of animal and vegetal species. Again, this is the history of life on Earth. Geologic time scale. Geologic time scale is a chronological dating that classifies geological strata in time. With regards to the history of life on Earth, we have three main eras. The first one is the Paleozoic, the second one is the Mesozoic, and the third one is the Cenozoic. But let us not forget the Precambrian period, which is the earliest in time among geologic ages. Going back to the three main eras, the first one is the Paleozoic. So in this era, it began 500 million years ago, wherein the supercontinent break up. Under the Paleozoic era are the Cambrian period, which is known as one of the most essential periods in the history of life on Earth. Ordovician period, where most of the marine life and first land animals was born. Silurian period, wherein most of the climate changes happened. Devonian period, which is also known as the age of fishes. Carboniferous period, wherein most of the extensive forest was made. And Permian period, wherein 90% of the marine species and 70% of the terrestrial species died. The next era is the Mesozoic era, which is also known as the middle age of the history of life on Earth. Under this era are the Triatic period, which is known to be the early age wherein first dinosaurs were made. Jurassic period, wherein gymnosperms became dominant. And the Cretaceous period, which is noted as the last portion of life of dinosaurs. For our last era, we have the Cenozoic era. During this era, plants and animals look a lot like the animals and plants that we have today. This is the history of life on Earth.